That actually is the perfect segue to the next two questions, which relate to how will your progressive commitments to environment, public education, et cetera, be presented in a way that opens the public's minds and eyes, turns the public into a group of mass voters, and shifts the overall political landscape and psychology of Florida. Florida is a tough state to be progressive in, so I would like to support a way to present new ideas to old minds and hearts. That's from Jacqueline. And Susan has a similar question. What skills would you bring to the office that would encourage the development of productive compromise for wildly different views?
Yeah, and that touches again on what I just clued in on at the end of this last question. You know, not all Republicans are bad, and we live in a very polarized time right now. And in Florida, during the election cycle, you won't see a lot of camaraderie between Democrats and Republicans because as Democrats, we have an opportunity to level the playing field in the state. We're 14 seats in the state house away from gaining parity, 50-50 parity, and we're 3 seats away in the Senate from gaining that 50-50 parity. And that's very important right now as we go into conversations next year about redistricting all of the state and federal districts post the census. And so it's very important right now for us to be thinking in that partisan mindset to be able to have the numbers to be able to play in that conversation. But after the election cycle, when we have the Democrats and Republicans that have made it into the state legislature, and we are talking about ways to compromise, I think you really do have to think about things from their lens and to their voters. Gaining seats in the House and the Senate will actually allow Republicans to be more individually minded than a hive mind. When you have an overwhelming majority, or you have a super majority in a legislative body, power is concentrated at the top by the leadership structure. And so many Republicans that might be themselves more moderate cannot vote in that way and cannot speak publicly in that way because of retribution and because the powers that be say that they can replace you just as quickly as you made it into office. And so actually by gaining seats in the House and in the Senate, we get ourselves to a place where it allows Republicans to be more independent. And so we'll see how far we get as far as pickups. My seat is the top pickup target in the state that would get us closer to parity. But what I would say is, focus on economic issues, right? People ask me all the time, Ricky, how can your state of Massachusetts keep on electing a Republican governor while being a said liberal bastion? And I'm like, because Massachusetts is not as liberal as you think when you talk about economics. Although they help their neighboring state of New Hampshire pay for their education department, they are very fiscally responsible, and even on the Democratic side, very fiscally responsible. And so I would say a lot of more moderate Republicans here care more about fiscal responsibility and balancing the budget than they do about the partisan hackery that happens with the more far right parts of their base. And so I think that already you see in Miami-Dade County where we have parity as far as our representation in the state House and Senate, we can extend that camaraderie to other counties and across the state if we were closer in parity, but on economic issues or on issues economically based. For example, on solar and wind power versus fracked gas and coal burning. Environmentalists, and we have for many decades, said fossil fuels bad, renewable energy good. It's just science stupid, right? Instead of focusing in more on the economic issues, right? We pay for fuel costs every year, and these power companies are asking for request reimbursement on higher fuel costs and pipelines and power lines and all these different things that keep on adding to your utility bill, whereas clean renewable energy cuts out the fuel cost and makes it over time more stable and less increases in utility bills. And so it's that kind of messaging and getting through to conservatives and to conservative legislators in that way, for example, is what's going to lead us to more compromise and lead us to a more progressive agenda than what we see now. On things that I see we won't have more common ground is on the issue of pro-choice versus pro-life, because that's a strictly religious issue here in the state of Florida. But where we will see gains is like what we saw in the decision at the Supreme Court, overturning the Louisiana state law, and where we saw conservative judges agree with our more liberal judges on that decision. And so obviously we look to those decisions and that language to try and get a return on investment on some of those more moderate Republicans in our state. But I think that's the way I would play it with Republican counterparts. And obviously I have experience finding ways to leverage data and economics arguments with them on a lot of different issues. And so that's how I would do it.